Ed, I hope you had a great day. The sun was shining, a little bit better than what we had yesterday. I'm going to turn up the mic here just a little bit. Trying to bring things down a little. It was a little hot yesterday. Okay, while we wait for everybody to log on, I see that we have nobody yet. So remember to sign your name when you come on, and also to text your name. Shows me that you're here, because not everybody is able to log in on YouTube. So make sure you text me and that you're participating. So while we wait for people to log on, remember to put your name in the comments and to text me. And the other thing I'd like you to do is, what type of vehicle do you drive? So today we're going to be talking about vehicles, roadways, people, different types of people, how they react on the roadway. So type in the comment what type of vehicle that you drive. Okay, we get 11 people, it looks like. Now down to 10. I still don't see anything in comments, and I don't see anything on my phone. So remember, you have to sign in. This is how you get credit. We're going to be talking about vehicles today and tomorrow. Hopefully everybody did their reading. That's the other thing. You've got to text me your homework. So chapter 1, there were some questions at the end. You were supposed to text me what you had for answers. So a few people did, but I want more. And the other thing I want you to do when you text me is, how many people got the email? I sent out an email indicating what I want you to do for homework tonight. It has to do with the vehicle that you're going to be driving, the one that you'll probably be tested on for your license. So we're going to talk a little bit about car controls tomorrow. So it's important for you to have a basic understanding of the car that you're going to be driving. So there was a worksheet that was sent out to you. So there's Nathan, there's Dan, Thomas, Charlotte. Now we're getting people. Zach, welcome. Connor, Hope. So remember, I want it both on the comments for YouTube and on the phone. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and hit the thumbs up. That's going to allow you to get notifications when the next class is. I always try to either put it in tonight or tomorrow morning, a reminder what the topic will be and what we're going to be covering, and to come here at 4 o'clock. So we're going to wait just another minute before we get going. There's Annika. Oh, Andy is with Nathan. Okay, Brad. I think we just about got a full crew here. It's getting there. Hope. Seth. Brad. All right. That's pretty good. Oh, a Volvo. I love Volvos. For some reason that is staying on. There we go. Okay. I want everybody to get some paper, pen and pencil. We're going to take some notes. We're going to kind of go through what you had for reading. what I'd like you to write down is the acronym HTS, Highway Transportation System. And that's what we're going to be focusing our attention on today, about a basic understanding of what does it mean to be a licensed driver, what do we have to be concerned about on the roadways, what type of vehicles, what are the different type of roadways that we're going to be traveling on. So the HTS is made up of 3 components, and we're going to be covering each one. So let's kind of go back a little bit in history and talk about transportation. Back in the early 1900s, when cars were starting to be manufacturing, that we had more horses on the road than we did automobiles. And you can almost imagine that most of the paved roads were around your major metropolitan areas like New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Detroit. So when it says only 150 miles of paved roads, we're really talking about the inner city, the place of commerce. We're not really talking about the ability to have paved roads in suburban areas. But let's kind of flip ahead to where we are right now. Today, we have 194 million drivers, 230 million registered vehicles traveling 42 trillion miles and 150 miles of paved roads. So we have come a long ways. So the cars that your grandparents were driving is nowhere near as complex as the vehicles that we're driving now. Now, because there were fewer people on the roadways and less paved roadways, we still had a very low incident of car crashes and deaths because there wasn't that many people on the road. And the hardest thing about driving, besides the physical maneuvering of a vehicle, it's judgment and decision making. We kind of saw that alluded to yesterday. Let's take a look at what it looked like back in the 1940s. Now, if you look at the picture really closely, right above where it says dependable used cars and trucks, it says Gerald E. Toll. And I had that as a backdrop yesterday. That is my grandfather. My grandfather had a car dealership here in Rochester, and he sold Oldsmobiles and Cadillacs. And I've had the fortunate ability to kind of go back and take a look at some of the old vehicles that he was selling back then, either through pictures or people that have actually owned those vehicles. Back in the 40s and 30s, cars didn't even have side mirrors. I mean, think about that. That is a safety feature on a vehicle to let you know what's coming up on the left and right side of your vehicle. Back, when cars were first manufactured, there weren't mirrors. And when we did have a mirror, it was only for the rear view mirror, not off to the sides. So it's totally different than what we see today. So let's take a look at where we are now. We are basically pressing into the future of what it's going to be like right now with the automobile industry. We're basically seeing self-driving vehicles on the road as we speak. This is where human drivers aren't required to take control to operate a vehicle. This is known as autonomous or driverless cars. They combine sensors and software to control, navigate, and drive a vehicle. Let's take a closer look at what these vehicles are going to look like. Now, in the video, they're going to actually show you there are 5 different modes of automation. And at the end of the video, it's going to tell you basically where we are right now. So all 5 have been developed and manufactured, but we don't have all of them on the road right now.
This is Volvo's 360C concept car, and it's just one idea of what completely driverless cars might look like one day. That means cars without even a steering wheel that can safely navigate public roads entirely on their own. But with how much we hear about self-driving technology making its way into everyday cars, it's hard not to wonder, how much longer do we have to wait? Understanding just how far we've come with self-driving technology can be a bit tricky. To help define how sophisticated the automated technology actually is, the Society of Automotive Engineers classifies these systems using 5 levels. Level 1 is driver assistance, where the vehicle is able to control steering or braking, but not both simultaneously. Level 2 is partial automation, where the car can assist with both steering and braking simultaneously, but your attention is required on the road at all times. Both Tesla's Autopilot and General Motors' Super Cruise are examples of this. Level 3 is conditional automation, where certain circumstances allow the car to handle most aspects of driving, and the driver has the ability to temporarily take their eyes off the road. Level 4 is high automation, where, in the right conditions, the car can take full control, giving the driver a chance to focus on other tasks. And Level 5 is full automation. In this hypothetical situation, the car drives you, and there isn't even a steering wheel. So what level are we currently at? Most experts would agree, somewhere between levels 2 and 3. However, one of their biggest concerns is the public's misconception that we're much further along.
There's an incredible amount of confusion in the general public around the context of self-driving. In our survey data here, 23% of respondents believe that a self-driving vehicle is available for purchase today. And a lot of that has to do with statements by Elon Musk and others talking about the driverless capabilities and the self-driving capabilities of vehicles. These are systems that are made to assist the driver under the supervision of a driver.
So, is it simply the limits of these automated systems that's holding us back? Actually, there are a number of other factors in the way. For starters, our roads. Simply put, many roads, especially in the United States, are too much of a mess to support cars that can drive by themselves.
So while many individuals out there are really working on the development of self-reliant automation, in essence, a robot that's fully capable of making its own decisions in today's infrastructure, the reality is today's infrastructure is not well equipped for autonomy. In essence, potholes, poor lane markings, and all the other crumbling aspects of our nation's infrastructure aren't going to support high-tech well.
In addition to more public roads needing signs and lane markings that self-driving cars can clearly make out, vehicles need to be wirelessly connected with that traffic infrastructure, as well as one another, in order to interact with the world around them flawlessly. Fortunately, automakers like Volvo already have technology that allows their cars to communicate with each other and alert drivers of hazards via a cloud-based network. This type of connected technology is being tested even further within driverless cars at M-City, a 32-acre mock city and testing facility at the University of Michigan.
So what are connected vehicles? When we say connected at M-City, we're really referring not to streaming Netflix into your passenger seat so much. That's a pretty solved problem in industry. But in how vehicles and infrastructure can be connected together for lots of other benefits like safety. The idea is a low latency way for vehicles to tell other vehicles and anything else that wants to listen where they are and where they're going.
So, once traffic infrastructure and communication is handled, what else do we need to address? Well, traffic laws. Governments have a number of important decisions to make in society's transition to self-driving vehicles. In the beginning stages, they'll have to define what weather conditions are appropriate for vehicles to be operating fully autonomously. This is due to the fact that many of these car systems can be disrupted by rain and snow. One industry they could look to for guidance is the airline industry, who doesn't hesitate to cancel flights in inclement weather. They'll also have to initially find a way for autonomous vehicles to safely navigate public roads amongst traditional cars. A possible solution could be designated lanes, similar to the high-occupancy vehicle lanes found on highways and bus lanes found in certain cities.
The government's kind of leaving it up to states to decide what's going on, just because the technology's so new and they still don't really understand what it's going to look like in the end. Once the government does fully involve the federal government, they're gonna have to speak to lobbyists, people that represent truck drivers and taxi commissions. They're gonna realize that a lot of jobs could be lost, and that's gonna be difficult. And then also liability. If these cars are on the roads and they're getting into accidents, like who is liable?
With all these things considered, back to our original question. How soon until we have self-driving cars?
I'd say within the decade, it's going to be on highways, but if we're talking about being able to take your car wherever you want across the United States, being able to travel through New York City and sleep the whole time, I don't think we're anywhere close to that. Probably several decades away from that.
Car makers and tech companies are very heavily focused on the context of driverless technologies. Now, I'm not saying that that's not the future. It is the future. But as many have begun to admit publicly, that future is further away than anybody's realistically considered to date. We as humans are really good at predicting the future. We're not so good at the timelines. And the timelines to driverless technologies changing how I live and move is probably in the order of several decades, if not further away.
How close are we to the Jetsons car? We're still a ways away, in my opinion. It isn't really a matter of when these technologies will arrive to me, but can we be ready and utilize them in the best way possible?
So this is our future. Actually, I think it's probably more your future than mine, because in the next decade, as people get older, I guess that would be one way for older people to get around. And we'll talk about the different types of people that are using the highway system. But this is very much something that is going to be part of your life. And I truly believe that in the next decade, we're going to see a high percentage of cars out on the road that are like what we just saw here. But I think the biggest factor would probably be money. Not everybody can afford a type of vehicle that would have that type of a system. And then you're going to have a group of people that no matter what you do for automation, they still want to be in control. They just don't trust an automobile to take them down the road. And then you've got people that are enthusiasts of driving, and they love to drive manual transmission. That you have to probably do, as a human. Not going to have a computer do that for you. So they're not going to want to give up their, 68 Mustang or, 62 Corvette. They're not going to give up those types of vehicles. So the older vehicles will always be something that we have to drive. But this is something that we have to think about. And level 3 is pretty much out there. We've got a lot of taxis, and I believe Amazon is actually using it in some places with trucks. So you will be driving down the road one of these days, and you'll look over to the right or to the left of you looking for a driver to be in the vehicle, and there won't be anybody there. And I'm sure that's going to be a little bit scary because, like they said, because of the roads or weather, are they going to be able to handle those situations where a human can see a problem happening up ahead and be able to make corrections and to get out of a bad driving situation? So let's talk about the U.S. Interstate System. It is the largest in the world, even though we do have a large system over in Europe called the Autobahn. If anybody had a chance to drive over in Europe, you know how fast they can drive on that roadway because it is built a lot better than the roadways that we have here in the United States. You'd notice that over in Europe they don't have potholes and they don't have cracks in the road because they dig a lot deeper to lay down a deeper foundation and allows the road to be more stable in cold temperatures. The reasons why we have roads getting beat up around here is because of rain and because of freezing temperatures, which does havoc on the roadway. Basically back in the 1950s, and don't write everything down that we have for bullets here, so I will tell you if this is important for you to remember, but this is just kind of an overview of your reading. So if I say, okay, write this down, you're probably going to be tested on it at some point, whether it be in an upcoming quiz, midterm, or final. And I won't test you on money when it talks about costing $25 billion over 12 years to complete, but then it actually cost them $114 billion and took 35 years. I think that's showing you the overrun of cost when it comes to building things, but I'm not expecting you to remember that. This I do want you to write down because I want you to understand and this is what we're trying to go over today, is how can we make our roads safer? by making our roads built a little better and a little bit safer, it's going to get us from point A to point B a little bit quicker, and we're going to be safer as a driver. So the two things that we hope to accomplish with the interstate system is that we want to get there quickly and we want to get there safely. Okay? And the average American will waste a lot of time in traffic. Basically, I found statistics that say right around 38 hours per year. So if you're living in an area where you've got an hour commute, you're probably spending time slower than what the posted speed limit is, which is wasting your time. You could be at work and actually making money. And that is what we're trying to solve, is how can we get the greatest number of people to where they want to go quickly and safely. So let's break down the components of the HTS. So the first thing I want you to write down is people. Now, if I had you in class at this point, I'd go around the room and I would probably be asking you, what is the youngest person that you would be concerned about as a driver? We'd get different answers. Some people would say 16, some people would say 4 or 5. But really, I want you to write down in your notes, the youngest person that you really need to be concerned about is probably about a 2 or 3-year-old. Once a child knows how to walk or run, they become a problem to you as a driver. Now you're probably thinking, well, why are they out on the road? Well, they're not on the road on a bike, but they could be walking or they could be in a parking lot. So as a parent is trying to get a young child into a car, that child could break away from the parent and run around the back of a vehicle. You're looking for a parking spot, and all of a sudden you've got a young child that you've got to contend with. That's a problem as a driver. You're going to have to quickly think about what is your best course of action. Of course, you don't want to hit the child, but then you got to think about, where do I steer my vehicle? Do I go left? Do I go right a little bit? Do I hit the brakes real hard, just a little bit? There's a lot of decision making and choices like that. The other thing I want you to write down, the oldest person would probably be in their 90s. I haven't heard of too many people in their hundreds driving, but I've certainly heard of people in their 90s. I actually know someone who's in their 90s and still driving. And if we were in class, I would ask you, how many of you drive with your grandparents, or what type of driver are they? Most people will say that they have driven with their grandparents, and most people can start to see some of the mistakes their grandparents are making, like missing a traffic light, not staying centered in their lane, going too slow, or maybe even going too fast. But your driving skill will start to deteriorate as you get older. And basically, I have found that the driving skills of an older driver mimics one of a new driver. So the mistakes that you're making now are probably going to be the mistakes that your grandparents are going to be making in their 80s, or if they drive a little bit longer. So let's talk about some of the physical skills. Right at the top of the list, I want you to write down turning heads. Whether you're young and you're just not trained and you don't look to the left and to the right well enough, but I would say the biggest mistake for most people are only looking straight ahead when they drive, not scanning to the left and to the right enough or well enough. This is a driving skill that you have to incorporate into your driving in order to get a license. I will tell you right now, and we're going to talk about this either later this week or the beginning of next week, when you go for your driving exam, the driving examiner will be sitting in the seat next to you watching you drive, and they're looking at your head movement and they're looking at your eyes. If you're not scanning, you could be driving the speed limit, you could be positioned in the middle of the road, but if you're not scanning, they're marking you off. You've got to show that you have the technique of checking for traffic all around your vehicle. And we're going to be talking a little bit later in class, not today, about the 4 quadrants around your vehicle: front, back, left, and right. And basically when you should be looking, how much you should be looking, but that's for another lesson. Let's talk about older adults again. Their reaction time to go from the gas to the brake is going to be much slower than yours. So you've got to be very careful driving around older people because they're not going to respond the same as you do. Always late breakers. Older drivers are always late breakers. Now, you could be a late breaker because you're distracted, because you've spent time looking away from the driving scene where you're looking at the radio or looking at your phone, talking to a passenger. You're taking your focus away from the roadway and you're going to be a late breaker. So people do have different physical skills. And then on the mental side, it could be drivers that are confused about the driving scene. They've never seen a sign before and they have a hard time interpreting what it means and what to do. They could be in an area where they're not familiar with and there are multiple lanes and the lines of the lanes are faded and they have no idea of where to position their car to make the car where they want to go. So you got to remember when you're in a lane with a line or an arrow that says you need to go straight, even if you want to turn left, you have to go straight. You're not supposed to cross over a solid white line to make a left-hand turn. That is an illegal maneuver. That is a ticketable offense. So your mental skills, okay, could show up in your driving where you're making mistakes. The next thing is vehicles. And I really wish that we were in class because this is one of the favorite topics that I like to talk about. Because when I had you log on this morning or this afternoon and I asked you to write down the type of vehicle that you're going to be driving, what I want you to write down in your notes, and I've got all of them, not all of them, but a good majority of them up here on the slide. It does matter the type of vehicle that you're driving. So in your notes, write down length, width, and speed. Because you probably never thought of this before, but if you look at the picture, this is a highway that has different types of vehicle. Now, why is that important to you as a driver? Well, what happens when one of those large trucks comes right up beside you? What happens when a sports car speeds up and cuts out in front of you? You need to know the characteristics of what these vehicles can do, meaning accelerating, braking, and their width and their length, because you're going to be interacting with these vehicles and it's going to come into play with what you do. How do you position your car on the road when you're around these vehicles? And let's just kind of go through them. Now, I just put the generic passenger vehicle, but even a passenger vehicle could be a sedan, it could be semi-compact, could be a sports car. SUVs come in different sizes. Some are pretty large, some are getting to be pretty small right now. And then trucks, we're talking about trucks like pickup trucks. Same thing. Come in different sizes, four-wheel drive, two-wheel drive, all-wheel drive. Tractor trailers, do they have a double? Is it a tractor trailer that's carrying a double cargo? Motorcycles, bicycles, skateboards, rollerbladers are probably two of the worst things to encounter on the roadway. And what I want you to write down in your notes and why I included this here is because balance of a skateboarder and a rollerblader, there's always a chance that they could tumble and fall in front of you. So when you're driving around a rollerblader or a skateboarder, you're changing your position on the roadway and you're going much, much slower as you drive around them in case anything bad happens. By far the worst to be driving around. I actually had a student from another high school that halfway through driver's ed, he was on his skateboard and he fell off his skateboard and he fell into traffic that was going 40 miles per hour and killed him instantly. Okay, didn't have control of his skateboard. The automobile driver did not see him because it was right around the corner. You've always got to expect the unexpected as a driver. I feel bad for the family of my student, but I also feel bad for the driver that hit him because he didn't have enough time or distance to react to what was happening. But you could also, different other vehicles, you could have, fire trucks, police cars, dump trucks. There are so many vehicles out on the road. and each of them are going to have different characteristics and attributes that we're going to have to be ready for. Now, the last thing of the HTS is roadways. So we got people, we have vehicles, and the last one is roadways. So we've got dirt, and the biggest difference between a paved road and a dirt road is your ability to have traction. So right down traction is something that you want to make sure that you always have. Once you have reduced traction, you should always drive at a lower speed. Now let's just talk about some of these different areas that you're going to be driving. A rural area. Rural means country. I notice that some of you live in Barrington and Lee. That's a rural area. Okay, Portsmouth, Rochester, Dover, more of a city, more traffic lights, multiple lanes, but you're not going to have that in Barrington and Lee. Highway, and the nice thing about living where we live, when you take a look at mountainous roads and coastal roads, we can go an hour north, south, east, or west and hit every single type of roadway that there is. I think I mentioned yesterday that my nephew grew up in Nebraska, got his license at a much younger age than what we have here. But in their town, they only had like 2 traffic lights. He used to hate coming to visit to New Hampshire because it was too complicated. Even though he could, operate a vehicle with his gas and brake and the steering, but when decision making came into play, things came at him way too fast, and it took him a while to get used to it. So where you learn to drive has a big factor of what type of driver you're going to be. That's why I always think it's good to find yourself pushing your capabilities, to something a little bit more complicated, as you start logging in more and more driving times with your parents. And you'll do that with me, as we start out with easy skills and we get to the more complicated ones. But we're always trying to push you out of your comfort zone to make you a better driver. Don't stay in the same area too long to drive. You want to go places that you're not familiar with, because that will challenge you as a driver. Could you imagine if we woke up tomorrow morning and on the news, everything is the virus right now, but can you imagine if we woke up tomorrow morning and they said, because of the virus and we want to cut cost, we're going to do away with anything to do with licensing. Anybody that wants to drive can drive. We're going to have no test. We don't care what you drive. It could be a manual transmission, automatic. It could be a tractor trailer. If you think you can control it, we're going to let you get out on the road and drive. And the other thing we're not going to do is we're not going to fix the roads, and we're not going to patrol the roads. We're just going to let people go at it. Now, if the road gets too bad, we'll fix it, but for the most part, we're not going to really maintain it unless it's not drivable. We have to regulate our roadways. That is the only way that we're keeping injury and death down, because we have to hold people to a certain standard. And we hold maintenance crews and the towns to fixing up our roads. And we hold the police accountable to how they patrol, because it happens in every town and every city. People will call and complain that people are driving too fast, not stopping at stop signs, and they will ask the police department or the state troopers to come out and patrol a particular area to make sure people are doing what they are supposed to be doing. That will make us safer. That is what we're trying to accomplish. We don't want some people following rules and some people not following rules. We want everybody, doing the same thing. That is only fair and just, and it's not only safe. So what I want you to write down in your notes is that just the top 3 things here: federal, state, and local. Just know that there are 3 levels of bureaucracy around our roadway system. Now, in your reading, it talked about the National Traffic Motor Vehicle Act, the National Highway Safety Act, and even if you go to another country, there's going to be ways that they maintain roads. So basically, this is what they came down with regulations. The National Traffic and Motor Vehicle Safety Act requires automakers to build certain safety features such as safety belts and shatterproof windows into vehicles. And by the way, did you know that the front windshield does not shatter? The side windows and the rear window, you can break right open and just bust right through them. But your front windshield is to prevent things coming in towards you and you going out through the front windshield. There's a thin layer of film that keeps the glass between that area of film from breaking away. So it really keeps it intact. The second part is the National Highway Safety Act establishes specific guidelines for state motor vehicle safety programs. So this is like for DWI education programs, distracted driving programs, motorcycle courses. That is all being funded on a national level to make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to do. And then your state, city, and town passes certain regulations that must be obeyed within their limits. Like in Durham, we have a ton of speed tables. And Durham is one of the only cities that I know of that has put an orange border around a speed limit sign so your eyes gravitate towards the speed limit sign. So that is something that the town officials have requested so people will look at the speed limit and hopefully follow it. Okay, let's look at some important facts here. In a given year, the likelihood of being involved in a crash is 1 in 9. That is pretty low. And we're going to be spending a whole class on insurance. And what I want you to write down in your notes is insurance is based upon numbers, which means that the more people that are getting tickets, moving violations, will have a direct relation on what you're going to be paying for insurance. So think about this. When you move from New Hampshire to, let's say, Massachusetts, or from New Hampshire to Ohio, every state regulates their own insurance department. So your rates will change. Even though you haven't really gotten that much older, you just moved to another state, you're driving the same vehicle. Why is my insurance so much different? Why is it lower? Why is it higher? Well, it's based upon, in that particular area, people getting involved in crashes and people being picked up for moving violations. That is how insurance rates are made. But we'll talk more about that. Then in a given year, your chance of suffering a disabling injury is about 1 in 83. Motor vehicle crashes kill about 38% of all people between the ages of 15 and 20. That's pretty high. Okay, your age group, your driving age group, represents a very high percentage of people that are dying in car crashes. So this is why you're paying so much in insurance. And more than 57% of all fatal crashes involve one vehicle. And what this should tell you is basically you're the one at fault. If there's no other car involved, it is something that you're doing. You're not picking up a traffic light or a stop sign. You're running into an intersection blindly. Or you're going too fast around a corner and you're going head on into a tree. That is your mistake. That is your fault. So you're causing the injury. You're causing the death. But for older people, it's basically two people doing two things wrong. Okay, what I want you to write down your notes, and I want you to take a look at this video that I'm going to show you, is that road design, or what they do as in telephone poles, guardrails, warning signs, all come into play of making our roads safer. Now, I apologize. This is one of my older films that I have, but I really kind of like what they're talking about. So kind of look at the content. Don't look at the way people are dressed or the type of vehicles that they're driving.
Standing at the site of a fatal accident.
This tree is going to be struck again and again and again. pole has obvious signs of vehicle impact.
We're at the location of a serious accident.
The driver lost control of the vehicle.
Mother and two small children.
Wrapped around this utility pole.
Left-hand guardrail that will steer a car.
Outdated as of 25 years ago.
Ridge columns right along the edge of the roadway on both sides.
Highway safety ought to be a priority.
The tendency is to put back what was there.
As a highway engineer, you should do anything you can to reduce the severity of an accident.
This location may seem harmless to drivers that use it every day, when in fact it can be deadly and is loaded with roadside hazards. For example, the large tree located just inches off the edge of the pavement. The utility pole on the outside of the curve. Moving down the road a bit, an unprotected guardrail end, which when struck can be deadly and penetrate into vehicles that lose control and come into contact with it. And over here is another large tree located just about 1.5 feet off the edge of the pavement, and in fact was the site of a fatal crash just last year.
Each year in the United States, we have a large number of deaths and serious injuries resulting from single vehicle crashes into roadside obstacles or roadside hazards. This has been a problem that's been with us for a long time, and it continues to be one of the leading causes of death and serious injury in this country.
Before about 1965, or around that period of time, the highway engineering profession's primary mission was to make a safe roadway. There was also the feeling that once you got off that roadway, you're on your own. It's up to you to get out of the perilous situation. It's their job to provide a good roadway and your job to stay on it. About in the late 60s, the philosophy changed to, if a vehicle goes off the roadway, as a highway engineer, you should do anything you can possible to either get them back on the roadway or reduce the severity of an accident.
We learned a lot in the early days of the interstate system, how to make these roadside features less hazardous. And so today, the modern interstate system exemplifies the designs that eliminate most serious roadside hazards. And since we've built many miles of interstate system in the United States, the problem has shifted somewhat. But we still have a very serious problem on the many miles of secondary road that are still out there.
The most dangerous roads we have now are our rural secondary roads. They have the highest fatality rates. There's where you have very little opportunity to recover if you run off the road.
Almost half of all serious roadside hazard crashes occur on curves. Curves to the left are especially hazardous. Signs and pavement markings can help guide drivers around curves, but even where curves are well delineated, drivers can still lose control. And putting signs on roadside hazards isn't the answer. We need to do a lot more than that.
One of the major fixed objects along our roadsides, and the one that accounts for probably more fatalities than any other single fixed object, are trees.
This is an example of the most common problem in the area of roadside hazards, which is trees near the edge of the pavement, especially on curves. On this curve, there are trees right up against the edge of the pavement, and compounding the problem here is a complete lack of protection against drivers striking the trees. The trees are directly in line with any vehicle that loses control around that curve. After trees, utility poles are the most frequently struck object in fatal roadside hazard crashes. Every year in the United States, over 1,000 people die in crashes with utility poles. On this pole, you can see the marking and the scarring that's obvious. This pole has been hit many times and is located in a way that will guarantee it will be hit again in the future if it stays here. The way to deal with this problem is also obvious. Utility poles can be set much further back away from the road, creating a clear zone. Utility lines can be buried underground, eliminating the use of poles altogether. And the use of breakaway utility poles is an option. It's appropriate to remove isolated trees that are located in dangerous locations. However, trees and poles are often located in groups, and when this is the case, it's often more appropriate to shield those objects through the use of a safety barrier.
Guardrails are the most widely used type of safety barrier, but they're not used often enough to keep cars away from trees and poles. They're very effective, but if guardrails aren't installed properly, they can become hazards in their own right. One problem can be that while they're keeping cars away from one obstacle, they can direct them right into another.
This guardrail has been placed in such a way that while it provides adequate protection in some areas, it actually leads vehicles directly into the base of a very large tree, which is very dangerous. The way to correct the situation is to extend the guardrail past all objects on the side of the road and only end or terminate once there's a safe place to do so.
We have here a guardrail that's supposed to be protecting you against the bridge rail, but in actuality it runs you right into the bridge rail if you hit the guardrail. And as we can see, that bridge rail has been hit many, many times. The proper design is to have the guardrail out in front of this bridge rail and attached to it, such that you have a smooth transition from one to the other.
Another problem is the end of the guardrail itself, which can become a hazard if it isn't installed properly.
We're at the location of a serious accident with a mother and two small children that went off the left side of the roadway and hit this guardrail. This end treatment, which is like a knife edge, will impale a car, and that's what happened in this accident. The car hit the end of the guardrail, and it actually went up through the firewall into the passenger compartment of this car between two small children. This kind of guardrail is outdated as of 25 years ago, but still there's a lot of these around the country, thousands and thousands of them. Most modern guardrails have a type of end treatment that prevents the impalement of a car.
Burying the end of a guardrail can prevent impalement, but it's not the best answer because it can create a different hazard.
The solution to this problem is to make the post breakaway and make it essentially an energy attenuator.
This is one of the worst examples of roadside hazards that we've seen. Bridge piers like this one are often located very close to the edge of the pavement. They're especially deadly because of their large size and unyielding nature. At this site, a 36-year-old father of two small children died when his car veered off the road and struck an exposed bridge pier. We don't have to wait for somebody to die at a site like this to improve it. What we had at the site before was an exposed bridge pier that was extremely dangerous. Any vehicle running off the road coming into contact with that area of the bridge could result in devastating injuries. In place now is a properly designed guardrail that's attached to the exterior of the bridge pier. Along with that guardrail is a proper and safe end treatment that allows for a gradual deceleration of vehicles that run off the road.
Where bridge supports and other rigid structures can't be safely separated from traffic with guardrails, an alternative is energy-absorbing devices. Crash cushions and other devices can do an effective job of slowing vehicles down gradually. These concepts are simple. Wherever possible, provide a clear roadside that allows drivers a chance to regain control if they leave the road. If a clear zone isn't possible, make sure posts are designed to break away in a crash. And any remaining hazards should be separated from traffic by properly installed guardrails or other energy-absorbing barriers.
We at the federal level ran a highway safety improvement program. Under that program, we provided funds to the states to improve high accident locations. That turned out to be a very effective program.
Fixing roadside hazards is important because it can prevent a momentary loss of control or a minor crash from becoming serious or life-threatening. Engineering safer roads must become an even more important part of the national strategy to reduce deaths and injuries, now that speed limits and travel speeds have increased.
There are funds available for renovating and improving highways. It's very important that some of those funds be allocated to fixing the roadside hazard problem. Obviously, we can't fix them all at once. Therefore, it's very important for highway departments to have sensible priority schemes so that they can decide which ones they should fix first.
Roads are built by civil engineers, and civil engineers are civil servants, and they tend to do what the public wants. The only way you can get the state and local government to enhance safety on the roadway systems is for the public to want that enhanced safety. And I think they do.
Next time you're out on a country road, take a closer look. If you see hazards that shouldn't be there, especially on curves where loss of control is most common, ask yourself why. The answer is that for too long, solving this problem hasn't been a high enough priority. Raise the priority and help make safer roads.
Okay, basically what I want you to take away from this video is that the way that we build our roadways has a direct correlation to how safe we're going to be if we leave the roadway. Now, most highways that are built now, it's all new technology. So those breakaway poles and the way that they've done the guardrails, we're not building them like we did 30, 40 years ago. But as they said in the video, there are going to still be some of those roads that are not near a city or a highway. Your rural areas are going to be more dangerous. And at times as a driver, we let our guard down. We think because we're driving, and even cars are built so much better now, meaning the material that we're using, the crumple zones, we have airbags all around, passenger side airbags. Most people are wearing safety belts now. 30, 40 years ago, they didn't do that. So that's why our roads are becoming much, much safer. But we still have to be diligent in what we do as a driver on these back roads. So that means we've got to be paying attention. We can't let the car drift off, hit an edge, and pull us right into trouble. Now, in the video, they showed you a lot of those, they said turn or corner signs. There is a specific name for them, and I want you to write it down. So this is going to give me an idea of who's actually still watching. It's called a chevron sign. Okay, I'll spell it. It's C-H-E-V-R-O-N, chevron. A chevron sign is a big, thick black arrow on a yellow diamond-shaped sign. That is indicating a very sharp turn. Now, it's basically put on the side of the road for people that are driving at night. Because a lot of times at night when you're going around corners, up and down hills, you don't get to see where the road's going that well. During the day, you can see, and you can slow down and brake and position your vehicle to make a better turn. But at night, those signs really are beneficial. So they're called chevron signs. The more signs you have, the sharper the turn, or the thicker the black arrow, the sharper the turn. Different states use different techniques to alert you of how sharp the turn is, but they always put up a chevron sign. Now, we always try to think about what the future is going to look like. So when we're talking about building roadways and making them safe, we've got to think about what is traffic going to be like in about 20 years from now. This is a third world country. I think it's Myanmar, and I'm not even sure where that is. Burma. It used to be called Burma, I see. But that is a 10-lane roadway. And they thought everybody was going to be coming into this particular city. And they built the infrastructure, all the roadways. And then for whatever reason, I'm not too sure why, but nobody's living there. And you can see in the picture, there's only like 3 vehicles, and people are actually crossing. But each side of the road has 10 lanes. So this is overkill. But it was all based on statistics and what we think things are going to be. I mean, closer to home, the reason why we've got multiple lanes on the Newington Bridge going from Dover to Portsmouth is back 20 years ago, traffic was horrendous early morning, late afternoon, and as much as last year before they opened up multiple lanes on the new bridge, traffic would back up quite a bit. So we're trying to anticipate what is going to be happening here in New Hampshire, and that's why we built that bridge. And even right now, we're kind of maxing it out. I think we still have a lane or two to open up, so hopefully that will alleviate that problem. What I want you to do, like I said, I give you homework that's on the sheet. I also give you homework that I sent to you. So I sent you a link. So if you did not get an email from me, so check your email. There's a homework assignment dealing with different items on your car. I want you to look in your car manual. So go out to the glove compartment of the car that you're going to be driving and pull out that manual to answer the questions. But here in the middle of today's session, I want you to put in a comment, or you've got to text me on your phone, okay? Name a place that you've driven or a place you've been a passenger that you feel is unsafe, and they could do something different to make it better, to make it safer. So I've got right here on the slide a place that I feel needs to be addressed. This is just north of Rochester in a town called Milton, New Hampshire. And if you take a look at the picture, there's a telephone pole that's about 2 feet off the edge of the curb. There is no way, I have no idea why an engineer, whether it was a road crew or electrical company, somebody should have said, hey, wait a minute, I'm not going to follow through in putting a pole here. Or I'm not going to pave this road. This is just not right. There's no way that telephone pole should be there. And if you look to the picture, off to the right of the picture, there is a telephone pole where they could have stretched the wires to attach them. And if you take a look at the picture, I don't know if you can see it well enough, but there is a wire that goes off at an angle. Can you imagine if a young child, and by the way, just to the right of the picture is an elementary school. So the elementary school is probably within like 300 feet of that telephone pole. So kids are going to be walking, kids are going to be on bicycles. There's a good chance that they're going to come around the corner and hit that support wire at an angle because you're just not going to see it. Let me show you the picture from a different vantage point. See the support wire? See how the pole, they got the telephone pole and a street sign. I can tell you right now that enough people have complained about that, and that is no longer there. So enough people actually took action, and that's what we're supposed to do. And that's part of what we're talking about today, is that the federal, state, and local government, we have to make changes. We've got to make sure roads are safe. And here's a case in point. So make sure that you put it in a comment or put it in a text. You've got to text me someplace. So you got to figure out where the road is. If you don't know the name of the road, tell me what town it is and just kind of give me a description of what it's like. Like there's a road in Lee that you come around a corner and you can't see cars coming from the left. That's a good example of road design that needs to be different. It could be a speed limit. You could say, I don't think the road should be posted at this speed limit. It should be slower because cars can't get out. So I want you to think of some place that you've driven or you've been a passenger where the road design needs to be addressed. It has to be changed because it's not safe. Now remember, we talked about 100 years ago, there were more horses than cars. So a lot of times these roads weren't built for cars. These are actually like horse and carriage roads, like around Strawberry Bank and probably out around Lee. They were dirt roads before they were paved roads. So that's going to create a problem. Can you imagine getting onto a highway thinking you're going to work and all of a sudden traffic starts backing up? You turn on the radio and they say there is a roadblock up ahead and traffic cannot move. You have no place to go. And this is no lie. You can actually go online and Google this and you will find there was a time, probably about 10, 15 years ago, in China where people were stuck in their vehicle for 9 days. I mean, we're having a hard time with the virus in our house, but we've got a refrigerator in a bathroom. But can you imagine being stuck in your car for 9 days? That's crazy. I wouldn't let people up on the highway. But this is what happened. They were doing construction or there was a breakdown and people could not get off the roadway. They were stuck. Now, I guess you could leave your vehicle there and come back for it, but it'd be kind of a long walk. Okay, I want you to write this down. I'm glad to see people putting in some messages here. So I want you to write down the definition for risk. Risk is defined as the chance of injury to yourself or others and the chance of damage to your vehicle or property. It's real. It's more probable than you think. People let their guard down when they start learning to drive because they get more comfortable with the skill of driving and they're not looking down the road far enough or they're not going at the correct speed to handle problems that are coming and they drive themselves into trouble. That is going to be one of your biggest problems when you first get your license because no one is going to be beside you any longer with a second set of eyes helping you make decisions. It's going to be solely on you. You're going to have to make all these decisions by yourself. When we were looking at the video yesterday that Andy Pilgrim did, and we didn't get a chance to see this particular clip, so I wanted to show it today. And I want you to write down these two terms. So I do want you to know this. Hint, hint, hint. Dangerous and vulnerable. Okay, let me explain. Okay, when you are driving too fast, when you are on your phone texting while you're driving, you become dangerous to other people on the roadway. You're the one that's going to initiate the crash. You are going to be the cause of the crash. Now, if you're talking to passengers, if you're looking at your phone, even though you're going the speed limit and you're positioned in the center of your lane, but you don't see people coming at you over the center line or running a stop sign because you're not paying attention, you become vulnerable. All right? So one, you're causing the incident. The other term, you're allowing it to happen and you don't know what's happening. You're putting yourself in a bad situation. So let's see what Andy has to say about dangerous and vulnerable.
Sides to the distracted driving issue that all drivers need to understand, and it revolves around overall awareness. If your eyes or mind are away from driving for some distraction, then you are always either dangerous or vulnerable. Let me explain. Many drivers, both experienced and new, believe they are safe and doing nothing wrong as they drive distracted, if you can believe that. They tell me they can drive distracted, maintain their speed, stay in their lane, etc. They actually tell me this as if they are above the distracted driving problem. I want to change this extremely dangerous perception right here. We've all seen or heard tragic stories about drivers hitting other vehicles head-on. A driver who veers into another lane or into oncoming traffic is obviously completely unaware and dangerous. There is no doubt about that one, but let's look a little deeper. To the drivers who think they can successfully drive distracted, I explain this. You may think you can drive distracted and not be dangerous, but I know for certain you are vulnerable. Imagine, for the sake of discussion, that you were looking away from the road for a second or deep into your phone call right at the moment an oncoming vehicle veered into your lane. Exactly. You would not see them at all if you were looking away, or you would react much slower because you were distracted and your mind was deep into the phone call. Not good, huh? Research shows us that this is accurate. Every day this tragic scenario plays out on the roads. Bad choices followed by unfortunate timing. It takes two fully or partially distracted drivers coming together in most collisions and crashes. Never give up your chance to see distracted drivers coming into your driving space. I don't want you to be dangerous or vulnerable. And please, never with children in the vehicle. Many drivers, both experienced and new, are not respecting that driving is different. The potential downside to driving mistakes are well known to parents. Driving deserves more respect from all drivers. The cost of avoidable mistakes by new drivers is mind-numbing. We are talking avoidable heartbreak and billions in medical expenses, legal costs, and property damage. There is a troubling trend I need parents to be aware of. Many teens are now waiting to take the driving test until they are 18 or 19 years of age. In most states, an 18 or 19-year-old can walk into a DMV and take their driving test with no driver training whatsoever. This information should clearly be a wake-up call to all parents.
Okay, he really brought up some good points about how you've always got to keep up your guard with driving. So let's write down some notes of how can we reduce our risk as a driver. The first one is making sure your vehicle is in top driving condition. So part of your homework is to know the fluids, tire size, gasoline type. We're going to talk about your vehicle that you're going to be driving tomorrow. Second thing I want you to write down, anticipate the actions of others. That's going to be a whole class when we talk about communication and turns. Okay, knowing and understanding what other people are doing. Thursday's class, protecting yourself and others. So we're going to be talking about airbags, seatbelts, and helmets on Thursday. So what can we do to protect ourselves better? Fourth bullet, driver only drive when you're in sound physical and mental condition. So that's a typo. And the last bullet here, number 5, make a conscious effort to develop your driving skills. And that's basically what a driver's ed program is about, is to take hopefully your driving skill that your parents have been working on with you to the next level, to kind of fine tune it, to make it top notch. So what are some of the foundations of being an effective driver? As well, using your eyes, learning how to search down the roadway and picking up driving cues from people and signs that will help you be a better driver and give meaning and definition to what is going on the roadway. You need to understand what your options and choices are as a driver. I'm sure some of you, when you drive right now, when you're going down the road, you'll be looking at your parents and you'll ask the question, what should I do now? Well, that's normal for a person that's learning. But once you become a licensed driver, there may not be anybody in the car to answer that question. So you should never not know. You should always have a clear understanding of what you should do. Now, when you get to maybe in a different state where the road design is a little bit different, it can be a little bit complicated, but you should have enough of a foundation of driving skills to get you through areas that are a little bit different. And then, of course, mastering basic driving skills. We have to make sure that when we do get out on the road that we're learning to do lane changes, learning how to merge, learning how to handle a traffic circle, how to angle park, perpendicular park, parallel park. There are so many different driving skills that you need to put yourself in a place to practice. So as we said yesterday, that muscle memory, that repetition is going to be so important when we get out on the road. Visibility, time, and space. Now, I know I'm going through this kind of quick because we're getting towards the end of today's session, but I do want you to write down these 3 terms: visibility, time, and space. Visibility, what you see from behind the wheel and how well you see it. So when you have less visibility, there is more risk in what you're doing. So you want to have a clear view. This is why following distance and slower speeds will always make you a better driver. Less distance behind somebody and faster speeds never makes you a better driver. It always makes you worse. Time, the ability to judge your speed and the speed of other vehicles and highway users. Space, the distance around you and your vehicle. A smart driver keeps a margin of space between their vehicle and other roadway users. So that's the following distance that we were talking about. And we're going to talk more about this, but every time I have a chance to mention it, I will. The distance that the state wants you to remember is 4 seconds behind a vehicle. It's no longer 3. Now, when your parents took driver's ed, it was probably 2. But because of weight of vehicles, braking capabilities of vehicles now on the roadway, we want more time rather than less time. So 4 seconds is what you will be tested on for following distance. So make sure that you have that written down and you understand it. We won't talk about the review questions. Okay, the top 11 driving errors when driving: not attending to your path of travel, which means is understanding what's happening in front of you. Driving 5 or more miles per hour too fast for conditions. That will always lead to problems. Going too fast around a curve. Inadequate search at an intersection and failing to yield to crossing traffic. Lack of attention at an intersection and being struck by another vehicle. Improper evasive action. Quick turn not executed properly. So a person steps out in front of you, you need to turn to the left, and you're just not able to do it. Not braking enough or turning the wheel enough. Failure to maintain a visual lead. You really don't know what's happening in front of you. You're going too close to the person in front. Failure to see action developing to the side of the roadway. Or following too closely to another vehicle. A lot of these are kind of blending together. They're kind of close. Willfully taking the right of way from another driver and being distracted. Now, right of way only tells people who should go, doesn't mean who can go. So it's something to help give meaning out on the roadway, but don't actually try to force yourself in front of other people, even though you know that you probably should be able to go first because people will take the right of way away from you. But we'll talk more about that. I think we'll watch this last video tomorrow. It's only about 4 or 5 minutes, but I want to kind of go through homework one more time. Let me take a peek and see who's here. We got 14 people, so I don't know who's not here. So remember, when we do sign off in the next 2 minutes, I want you to go to your phone and say that you are now signing off, so I know that when I signed off, you signed off. So you are basically, let me get out of this. All right, so when I sign off in a minute or two, I want you to sign off, put your name in the comments here, and to text me. All right, so that way I know that you started when I started and you ended when I ended. Okay, so you've got to do that. This is part of your attendance. Now for the homework. Once again, if you did not get an email from me, text me and I'll try to get the material to you. But check the email that you gave me. Okay, it's basically knowing your vehicle. We're going to be talking about what type of gas to put into your car tomorrow, what type of oil. We're going to talk about lights and bulbs. We're going to talk about different equipment on the vehicle. So it's really getting to know your car. Also in your textbook, I believe it is going to be chapter 4. Okay, so do chapter 4, read it, do the questions at the end. If you haven't sent me your questions for chapter 1 that we covered today, I want that in today. Okay, that you got to do it the day that it's due. So chapter 1 is due today. So, and remember, you should have texted me a place that was dangerous. Some of you I was able to respond to, but I want you to text me a place. That way I know that you were involved in the middle of the video. So text me a place that you feel is dangerous and what should happen to change it. So do your reading. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night. And thanks for joining in. Remember, come back tomorrow at 4 o'clock on time. It seems like we got a little bit of a late start. So have a good evening. See you tomorrow.